it seems like you're busy with something because you're forgetting to cut your son's hair. Look at him. He is beautiful, but look at his hair. When are you going to cut that hair?
Do you have a problem with that?
No, I don't have a problem. That is some long hair. And action.
If I were to ask you right now about Ellen Degeneres and what you picture when you think of her, I'm sure many of you would give very different answers. Some might think of her as a daytime talk show host, some might think of her as Dory from the Finding Nemo films, some might know her from Game of Games or other things. But what is the true story behind Ellen Degeneres? It may not be what you would expect. The early life of Ellen. Before we get into the current version of Ellen, we need to talk about some of the things that led up to her being how she is right now, including her life before she was a talk show host of great acclaim. For example, most people forget that before she even started doing acting, she was a stand-up comic. Degeneres started performing stand-up comedy at small clubs and coffee houses. By 1981, she was the MC at Clyde's Comedy Club in New Orleans. Degeneres cites Woody Allen and Steve Martin as her main influences at this time. In the early 1980s, she began to tour nationally, and in 1984, she was named Showtime's funniest person in America. That's a high honor to get, and it was that which led her to the realm of Hollywood. She gave up stand-up comedy for a time to do this. In 2018, Degeneres appeared in a new stand-up special, Relatable, for Netflix after 15 years not performing stand-up comedy, which she said she greatly loved, but more on that later. Eventually, Ellen went and started doing films and TV shows. She even did some educational videos for Disney alongside Bill Nye. But eventually, Degeneres' comedy career became the basis of the sitcom Ellen, named These Friends of Mine during its first season. The ABC show was popular in its first few seasons due in part to Degeneres' style of observational humor. It was often referred to as a female Seinfeld. Ellen reached the tide of popularity in April 1997 when Degeneres came out as a lesbian on The Oprah Winfrey Show. Her character on the sitcom also came out of the closet to her therapist, played by Oprah Winfrey. The coming out episode, titled The Puppy Episode, was one of the highest rated episodes of the show. The series returned for a fifth season, but experienced failing ratings due to ABC's cutting back on promoting the show. It was believed that the Walt Disney Company, ABC's parent owner, had become uncomfortable with the subject matter depicted on the show now that Degeneres' character was openly gay. In May 1998, Ellen was canceled. Many cite this not only as a major turning point for Ellen's career, but for TV in general. As she would later joke with Sean Hayes, she needed to come out like that both in real life and in TV life in order for shows like Will and Grace to exist. In fact, you could argue that without Ellen coming out, TV wouldn't have had some of its truly great TV shows for some time yet. After the cancellation of her sitcom, Degeneres returned to stand-up comedy and later re-established herself as a successful talk show host. And what a run she has had as that host. Perception versus reality. When it comes to being on TV, there are a lot of perceptions that people place on you. For example, if you're a light and bubbly character on TV, many people think that you must be that in real life, and yet that's not true. And Ellen is a great example of that. Ellen has taken on Oprah Winfrey's mantle as the queen of inspirational daytime talk, providing an oasis of positivity and escapist comedy in a culture short on both. She would have all sorts of fun with her audience and her guests. She would proudly do things that were atypical of a daytime talk show host, but she would also be honest and blunt when she needed to address things, and even stopped guests cold if things went against her beliefs. She became an icon in many ways. She wasn't just a defender of LGBTQ+ life, she was Ellen, and Ellen was happy and joyful and awesome on camera. But with Degeneres' status as a sunny stalwart comes certain burdens and constrictions, like the expectation to dance, which she finally stopped doing on her show. She has to be the only 60-year-old woman in America who is expected to dance with total strangers wherever she goes. There's been times someone wants a picture, and while I'm doing a selfie, they're like, "You're not dancing." Degeneres said in her office on the Warner Bros. Lot in Burbank, California. "Of course I'm not dancing, I'm walking down the street." Ellen started her dancing revolution, if you will, in order to help connect more with people and get them excited for the show. Even having the various guests who would do her show dance with her or dance as they entered the show. More people were caring about Ellen dancing than just getting to know Ellen. So can you blame her for wanting to stop the beat? As for her personality, she's a lot less happy than you see her. In person, she is more blunt, introspective, and interesting than she is on the show, willing to express mild irritation that might seem off key in front of a national audience. She's also much more likely to explore dark corners of her psyche, regrets, second thoughts, anxiety that linger, and Degeneres is appealingly open about the tensions in her career between providing a cultural safe space and delivering laughs, and says she has learned to care less about being liked. In sharp contrast to her public image as everyone's good friend, happy to listen, she presents herself in interviews and other settings with tongue-in-cheek, as cartoonishly aloof and indifferent, stuck in a privileged bubble, cracking several jokes, for instance, about her fabulous fabulous wealth. When she mentions a seat in the 10th row of an airplane, she admits with practiced cluelessness that the back of the plane is a mystery to her, asking if the seats even go that far back. That doesn't sound like the Ellen that is on TV, now is it? Because daytime talk shows get less attention than their late night counterparts, DeGeneres is often overlooked in discussion of important hosts. But make no mistake, no other current daily host has been as successful or celebrated. Among her vast collection of awards are the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, and 32 Emmys. And apart from Conan O'Brien, no one matches her television longevity. She's been a daytime host for as many years as Jon Stewart led The Daily Show, or her influence. Years before Jimmy Fallon turned games into standard elements of The Tonight Show, DeGeneres regularly invited guests to play them. Yet despite the clear desire for fun, her idea of fun in real life isn't the same as she does on TV. She likes to buy a lot of things, which we'll get to, and sometimes that means coming off as entitled versus everyone's best friend via her TV show. It's not the best thing in the world, but that's what happens when you're basically playing two different people, and this double life has led her to some really tense and awkward moments with a lot of people. The first date's debacle. Here's a more ironic set of hate that honestly didn't happen on the Ellen Degeneres show. Drew Barrymore is an accomplished actress with many fan and critic beloved films, and Ellen is obviously and has been a trailblazer for over a decade or so. Because of this, NBC decided to try and make a show called First Dates. It wasn't meant to be a fall in love kind of show, but rather an inside look at what makes first dates so painful and awkward, which actually kind of sounds pretty funny when you think about it. So the last point, they decided to bring in Drew Barrymore and Ellen Degeneres to be co-hosts on the show due to not only their star power but their comedic timing. But apparently it didn't work out because the two just couldn't get along both on camera and off. For a co-hosting gig, chemistry is everything, and these two apparently just didn't have it, even being referred to as oil and water backstage, which if you don't know that phrase, it means they don't mix. So what exactly happened? Apparently the two were divided in regards to who the top host was, and they each had their own massive fame and fan bases, and each felt that they deserved to be the one calling the shots behind the camera, which is not an environment you'd want to be a part of, I assure you. What's even worse is that despite their heat backstage, they tried to make it work in front of the camera, but it was clear that there was severe tension between them. Between all this friction and anger over who got to control what, the show wasn't picked up for a second season, which may have been the best option given everything that was going on. However, this proves something rather definitive about Ellen as a whole. Mainly, she wants control, complete control, and Drew Barrymore wasn't the only one to note that. The staff complained, especially when it comes to being on TV via a show like The Ellen Show. You know that not everything you see on TV is what you get, right? Mainly because these shows are not live, and many things are scripted, and sometimes whole interviews can be done multiple times if the need arises. Just as important, there are strict rules for the audience to follow if they don't want to get in trouble. That's all very basic stuff. However, recent times have apparently shown that Ellen doesn't treat her staff like you would expect her to. Now, I'm sure some of you are reading this and thinking, well, is she just hard on them? Like she works them to the bone because she wants it done right? And that may be a component of it, but rather the anonymous source that is citing her bad behavior is one who has said that when cameras aren't rolling, Ellen treats all of her staff like peasants. That was truly the word they used to describe the situation. Truly an interesting choice of words, but one that only would come out if the treatment of employees was truly subpar. According to this source, Ellen is known for causing all sorts of problems with the staff, so much so that sometimes they don't even get briefed as to what is going to be happening on the show. And when the staff doesn't know, that will cause problems. What's more, Ellen is apparently one to play favorites and even use that to cause tension amongst the crew. That's pretty harsh, don't you think? And if that's still not enough for you, her love of playing favorites will only get a few select members of the team to go to various fun events with Ellen while the others have to do the grunt work. Now, since this is an anonymous source, you do have to question the validity of it, but based on those who spoke with the source, they were very passionate about the bad treatment they were getting. If this is true and Ellen is someone who treats her staff badly in various ways, that's not good. In fact, it's rather cruel, especially if she encourages jealousy and bad relationships between the staff themselves. Then there was what happened recently with a global lockdown due to the epidemic. This was the first time that Ellen had to not do live shows of any kind outside of a certain other incident we'll talk about in a minute. So she had two choices. She could put the show on hiatus or do something different. Ellen being Ellen and following the examples of other talk show hosts, she decided to do all her shows from home and bring in guests via Skype or Zoom or whatnot. All above board and perfectly legal, but instead of keeping her crew staffed and having them work from her residence during these tapings and such, she only hired 4 of them to do so, and then hired many non-union staffers to fill in the rest of the gaps, which got a lot of people angry because Ellen is rich and probably should have been paying her staff who are now basically jobless during this period. Why did she not do it this way? No idea, but this isn't the first time she went against the grain in terms of her staff's rights and beliefs. The writer's strike. There are certain events that happen in Hollywood that go beyond the basics of what you would expect, and one of them is strikes of certain people. You might have seen one of them recently via the voice actor strike, but one of the bigger ones of the new millennium was the 2007 writer's strike, a strike that literally ripped movies and TV series apart because of the lack of ability to do shows with no writers. Some big casualties of this would was the second Transformers movie, which was awful. Series like Supernatural getting shortened seasons, and the TV show Heroes, which admitted they had to drastically change the course of the series because of the strike. And of course, late night and daytime talk shows like Ellen had to stop filming due to legal law, except Ellen didn't do that. Seriously. Instead, she honored the picket fence strike, if you will, for a day, and then she went on filming her show the day after. The only real change to her show was that of not doing the monologue, because that's what her writers would do for her. This angered a lot of people, including the Writers Guild of America, who went and blasted Ellen for her very lackadaisical attitude towards the strike. Obviously, her show survived the strike, but not before it cost her some serious credibility. So how does this make her difficult to work with? Simple. Some would view this as proof that anyone but her on her staff is expendable. Having a writer's strike? Fine, we'll do everything that doesn't have writers, and so on and so forth. Plus, as noted, she waited just one day after the writer's strike in order to continue her show, which was technically breaking the law. But I guess that Ellen really wanted to get her show going at all costs, which makes her a good host, but not exactly a champion of the workers like many expected her to be. Though of course Ellen had her own thoughts on the issues of the workers and complaints lobbied against her. That bugs me that if someone is saying that because it's an outright lie, she said, "The first day I said the one thing I want is everyone here to be happy and proud of where they work, and if not, don't work here. No one is going to raise their voice or not be grateful. That's the rule to this day." And at times she's been at odds with some of her guests, both on her show and out. The Caitlyn Jenner incident. This is arguably one of the most famous interviews that Ellen ever did, but if you listen to the person who got burned by this interview, she was set up by Ellen in a not so nice way. Caitlyn Jenner and her transformation into who she is right now is one that is both eye-opening and head-scratching in the eyes of some. As many would point out, it was Bruce Jenner's choice to have the $1 million operation to become Caitlyn, but some question the media praise that it got, such as her being given the symbol of courage during an award show. But it wasn't her transformation that bugged Ellen, rather it was her opinions on a certain subject. When they did their first interview together, Ellen was all for Caitlyn in her fight for the rights of transgender people, so there was no friction there. That is until Caitlyn started to talk about her feelings on gay marriage. Ellen is not just gay, she's happily married and has been one of the most vocal people in terms of the rights of her LGBTQ+ family. According to Jenner, she was once very opposed to it because of her traditionalist nature, which is the logic behind many such people's beliefs against gay marriage. But when Jenner tried to recover and say she was okay with it now, Ellen wasn't biting, not one bit. She called Caitlyn Jenner out on it, and that's when things got really awkward. After the interview, Ellen stated that she still didn't understand Jenner's position on the matter of gay marriage. Furthermore, Ellen offered Caitlyn the chance to dance with her, but she wouldn't do it, so Ellen said maybe she didn't want to dance with me because I'm a lesbian. To make matters even more awkward, Jenner was apparently offended by what Ellen said about her after the show to the audience, so she went on to the Howard Stern show and mocked her there. So it's fair to say they won't get back together anytime soon. But where the lie comes in is that according to Jenner, she called Ellen before the interview to outline what she wanted to talk about, including her shifting stance on gay marriage, but Ellen didn't play ball. Furthermore, she stated that Ellen never asked her to dance. So who do you believe here? It's hard to say, but based on Jenner's not so stellar reputation, I personally have to side with Ellen here. If for no other reason, then why would she try and disparage another symbol of the LGBTQ+ family? Exactly. It makes no sense. This is hardly the first incident with Ellen and guests, but each of these paint an interesting picture of who Ellen is and who she isn't. She's grown in more ways than just her age over the years, and so while we can still love Ellen for a lot that she does, you do have to wonder whether the TV Ellen is better than the real Ellen. Not that she really cares what you think, of course. She's fine living the way she does.